If a woman instinctively allows you to touch one specific place, the decision has already been made. Folks, most men never realize how much is being communicated without a single word. You might be talking, laughing, even flirting, yet still feel unsure where you stand. You wonder if she's just being polite, if she's comfortable, or if you're reading things wrong. And because you don't understand the signals, you hesitate, overthink, or move at the wrong time. Here's the reality, my friend. Attraction isn't decided by what you say. It's decided by what her body allows. Long before she says yes, her nervous system has already answered. Most men miss that moment because they're looking for verbal confirmation instead of biological permission. This video is not about tricks or pushing boundaries. It's about understanding the silent language women use when they feel safe, drawn in, and emotionally open. There are clear levels of touch, and each one reveals a different layer of trust, comfort, and surrender. When you understand these levels, confusion disappears. You stop guessing, you stop forcing, and you start reading what's already there. I'm going to break this down step by step using female psychology and Stoic self-control, so you know exactly what each signal means, and just as importantly, what it doesn't. One specific signal, especially near the end, changes everything once you see it. Let's get into it. Number 1. Touch is silent language. Folks, before words ever matter, the body has already spoken. Most men focus on what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. But long before a conversation turns meaningful, a woman's nervous system is already answering one question: do I feel safe and attuned with this man or not? Let's be clear, my friend. Touch is not about escalation. It's communication. It's a quiet exchange that happens below logic, below intention, and often below awareness. When two people are aligned, small natural moments of contact carry information. When they're not, even the smallest contact feels off. This is why some men feel confused. They're listening for words when the message is already being delivered silently. Here's the grounded truth. The body does not lie. Social politeness can fake interest. Conversation can fake chemistry. But the nervous system cannot fake comfort. When a woman allows natural situational contact without stiffening, pulling away, or closing off, she's signaling regulation, not surrender. And regulation always comes before attraction can deepen. Think about a simple, real situation. Paul is 50, calm, observant, and socially grounded. He's having coffee with Linda, 46, relaxed, confident, and emotionally present. As they stand to leave, Paul gestures for her to go first through the door. Their arms brush briefly. Linda doesn't flinch. She doesn't tense. She keeps talking and smiling. That tells Paul more than any compliment ever could. Her system stayed open. That's information. Now compare that with a different response. Same moment, same setting, but Linda stiffens slightly or steps away. That's not rejection. That's communication. Her system is not ready, and smart men respect signals instead of forcing narratives. Let's talk straight. Most men get into trouble because they interpret silence as permission. Silence is not permission. Comfort is permission. And comfort shows up in the body before it shows up in words. This is why trying to manufacture closeness through strategy backfires. You can't outthink biology. Touch as silent language also explains why context matters. The same contact can feel natural in one moment and inappropriate in another. Timing, environment, and emotional alignment decide how the nervous system reads it. This isn't about technique, it's about awareness. Stoic thinking fits perfectly here. You control your actions, not the response. When you stay present and observant, you respond to reality instead of desire. That restraint keeps you grounded. And grounded men read signals clearly because they're not projecting outcomes. Here's another everyday example. Michael, 48, is walking with Susan, 43, after a relaxed dinner. They pause to let traffic pass. Michael steps slightly closer to avoid the curb. Susan adjusts naturally, continuing the conversation. No awkwardness, no hesitation. That moment tells Michael that her body isn't guarding, it's engaged. This is what most men miss. These signals are not green lights to push forward, they're confirmations of alignment. Alignment invites patience, not urgency. When you understand, this pressure disappears. You stop guessing, you stop testing, you start observing. Touch is silent language because it bypasses ego. It speaks in comfort, tension, and openness. When you learn to read it, you don't need to force connection. You recognize it when it's there and respect it when it's not. If this reframes how you've been reading signals, write this in the comments. I read the moment. Don't go anywhere, folks. The next part explains why permission matters more than confidence, and why skipping that step is where most men go wrong. Number 2. Why permission matters. Folks, permission is the line most men never learn to see, yet it decides everything. Confidence without permission feels invasive. Confidence with permission feels safe, grounded, and magnetic. Let's be direct, my friend. Attraction does not come from boldness alone. It comes from knowing when your presence is welcomed and when it is not. Here is the truth most men misunderstand. Permission is not a verbal request. It is a biological response. It shows up in relaxation, openness, and lack of resistance. A woman's body grants permission before her mouth ever does. When you understand this, you stop guessing and start reading reality. Stoic philosophy helps here. Epictetus taught that wisdom is knowing what is in your control and what is not. You control your behavior. You do not control her comfort. Permission exists only when her nervous system agrees. When it does not, no amount of confidence can override it without causing damage. Let's talk straight. Many men believe that asking verbally ruins the moment, so they avoid permission entirely. Others believe that confidence means pushing forward regardless of signals. Both approaches fail. Real confidence is restraint paired with awareness. It is acting only when alignment already exists. Permission matters because the body registers threat faster than logic. When permission is present, the body stays open. When it is missing, the body closes, even if words remain polite. This is why some men feel confused. They hear yes, but feel distance. The body already said no. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In this context, injury is not physical harm. It is energetic intrusion. A man who respects permission separates himself instantly from those who force moments. That restraint builds trust, and trust is the foundation of deeper intimacy. Here is another layer most men miss. Permission is cumulative. It builds step by step. Skipping levels breaks the chain. When a man jumps ahead emotionally or physically, the nervous system reacts defensively. When he moves in sequence, comfort compounds naturally. This is why patience is not passive. It is strategic awareness. You are not waiting out of fear. You are waiting because alignment has not yet formed. That patience reads as maturity, not hesitation. Stoicism reminds us that desire should be guided by reason. Seneca warned that uncontrolled desire leads to suffering. Men who ignore permission suffer confusion, rejection, and resentment. Men who respect it move with clarity and calm. Permission also protects you. It prevents embarrassment. It prevents misreading signals. It keeps your self-respect intact. When you act only when permission is present, you never have to recover from crossing a line. Let's be honest, folks. Women feel safer and more drawn to men who do not need to test boundaries to feel powerful. Power comes from self-command. When you can hold back, you communicate strength without words. Permission is not about asking less. It is about observing more. When you learn, this attraction becomes simple. You stop trying to create moments and start recognizing them. If this shifts how you see confidence, lock it in now. Write this in the comments. I respect signals. Stick around, folks. The next section breaks down the first physical zones of comfort and why mistaking them for attraction is where most men go wrong. Number 3. The safe touch zone. Folks, this is where most men get confused and rush the meaning. The safe touch zone is not attraction, it is permission without intimacy. And understanding this distinction saves you from misreading signals and sabotaging momentum. Let's be real for a moment. The safe touch zone includes areas like the arms, upper back, and shoulders. These are socially acceptable points of contact that signal comfort, not desire. When a woman allows touch here, she's saying she doesn't feel threatened. That's it. No green light, no escalation, just safety. Most men hear she didn't pull away and immediately assume interest. That assumption is where mistakes begin. Safety is the foundation, not the finish line. Without it, nothing progresses. But having it does not mean you're already chosen. Here's a realistic situation. Mark is 47, relaxed and observant. He's chatting with Diane, 44, during a casual get-together. At one point, Mark lightly taps Diane's shoulder while making a joke. Diane smiles and continues talking. No tension, no stiffness. That tells Mark one thing only: she's comfortable in his presence. Now imagine Mark interpreting that as attraction and pushing further. The dynamic shifts. Diane's body tightens. The moment feels off. What changed wasn't her interest, it was his interpretation. He skipped the meaning of the signal. Let's talk straight. The safe touch zone exists to test awareness. Women watch how men interpret comfort. Do you stay grounded, or do you project desire onto neutrality? Men who pass this test stay patient. Men who fail reveal need. Another example. James, 51, is walking beside Laura, 46, after a work event. As they move through a crowded hallway, James briefly places his hand on Laura's upper back to guide past others. Laura doesn't react negatively. She keeps pace. That's situational touch. It communicates coordination, not chemistry. The power here is restraint. When you treat safe zone touch as information instead of opportunity, you demonstrate emotional control. Control creates respect. Respect keeps the door open. Here's what most men miss. Women feel safest around men who don't rush meaning. When you stay calm and don't escalate prematurely, her nervous system relaxes further. That relaxation is what allows deeper intimacy later. Safe zone touch also protects you. It gives you feedback without risk. You learn whether she's open to your presence without crossing lines or creating awkward recovery moments. Let's be blunt. If she's only comfortable with safe zone touch, that's not rejection. It's where things are right now. Men who accept that stay in the game. Men who push turn comfort into distance. This is Stoic discipline in action. You respond to what is not what you hope for. You observe without attachment. That mindset keeps you centered and attractive. When you understand the safe touch zone, you stop guessing. You stop rushing. You let alignment develop naturally. If this clears up past confusion, write this in the comments. I read comfort. Hang tight, folks, because the next part explains when intimacy actually begins and why skipping that transition is where most men lose trust. Number 4. When intimacy begins. Folks, this is the point where comfort quietly turns into intimacy. Not because something dramatic happens, but because the body shifts from tolerance to trust. Let's be clear, my friend. Intimacy does not begin with bold moves. It begins when her nervous system no longer monitors you as a variable. Most men think intimacy starts with desire. In reality, it starts with relaxation. When a woman feels safe enough to stop tracking your intentions, intimacy is already forming. This is why many men feel confused. They escalate physically while her system is still evaluating, and the moment collapses. Stoicism teaches patience for a reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote that nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Intimacy follows the same rule. It emerges when presence is steady and pressure is absent. When a man can remain grounded without rushing outcomes, trust deepens naturally. This stage shows itself through subtle signals. Her posture softens, her breathing slows. She stays close without needing a reason. There is no flinch, no adjustment, no protective tension. These are not sexual signals, they are trust signals. And trust is the gateway to intimacy. Here is the distinction most men miss. Intimacy is not about taking, it is about being allowed. When a woman allows closeness without bracing herself, her body is communicating readiness. That readiness is quiet, not performative. Loud confidence does not create it. Consistent calm does. Epictetus reminded us that strength is shown through self-command. At this stage, self-command matters more than action. The man who waits communicates respect. The man who forces communicates insecurity. Women feel that difference instantly, even if they cannot articulate it. Another important truth is that intimacy is reversible. If pressure appears, trust retreats. This is why rushing ruins momentum. When a man senses openness and immediately tries to capitalize on it, he breaks the very state that created the opening. Intimacy also requires emotional containment. You do not narrate the moment. You do not label it. You do not seek confirmation. You allow it to exist without comment. That silence is not awkward. It is regulated. Regulation creates safety, and safety allows intimacy to expand. Stoic discipline keeps you from acting on impulse. Seneca warned that desire, when uncontrolled, becomes a master instead of a servant. Men who let desire lead lose clarity. Men who let awareness lead gain depth. This stage is not about escalation. It is about stabilization. When intimacy begins, your job is to remain steady, not to push forward. When you can hold that state without urgency, you separate yourself from most men. This is where many men finally slow down and feel the shift. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just a calm sense of alignment. When you stop trying to advance and start allowing connection to breathe, intimacy strengthens on its own. That patience is felt as maturity, not hesitation, and it quietly separates grounded men from those still chasing outcomes without force, pressure, or performative confidence ever appearing. Drop this below now. I honor permission. Keep watching. The next zone reveals where trust turns dangerous fast. Number 5. Trust without words. Folks, this is where things move from comfort into something far more meaningful. Trust without words is not something you ask for or explain. It's something the body gives when it no longer feels the need to protect itself. And when that happens, the dynamic between a man and a woman changes quietly but completely. Let's talk straight, my friend. Real trust shows up before romance, before passion, and long before commitment. It shows up when her body relaxes around you without needing constant reassurance. When she stops monitoring your movements. When she doesn't feel the urge to create distance or guard herself. That's not attraction yet. That's trust forming at a deeper level. Most men miss this stage because they're looking for words. They want verbal confirmation. They want clarity. But trust rarely announces itself. It reveals itself through absence of tension, through ease. Here's a real-world example. Thomas is 52, calm, observant, and emotionally grounded. He's spending time with Rebecca, 47, confident but cautious from past experiences. They're sitting side by side talking. At one point, Rebecca leans slightly toward Thomas without thinking. She doesn't pull away. She doesn't adjust. Her body settles. That moment matters more than anything she could say. Her nervous system has stopped scanning for threat. Now, imagine Thomas reacting to that by leaning in aggressively or commenting on the closeness. The spell breaks. Rebecca becomes aware again. Trust retracts. The moment is lost. Trust without words exists only when it's not spotlighted. Another example. Daniel is 48 and walking with Karen, 44, after dinner. As they cross the street, Karen naturally reaches for Daniel's arm for balance. She doesn't hesitate. She doesn't check his reaction. She simply assumes safety. That assumption is trust. It didn't come from charm or lines. It came from Daniel's calm presence over time. Here's the key distinction, folks. Trust is not excitement. It's regulation. And regulation is the foundation that allows intimacy to deepen later. Without it, attraction becomes unstable. With it, everything slows down in the right way. Most men sabotage this by trying to convert trust into proof of desire. They rush, they escalate, they ask questions that pull the moment into the head instead of letting it live in the body. That's how trust collapses. Let's be honest. When a woman trusts you without words, she's allowing you into her personal space without defense. That's not casual. That's not accidental. But it's also fragile. It grows when you remain steady and disappears when you seek validation from it. This is where masculine restraint matters. You don't reward trust with pressure. You reward it with consistency. You stay the same man before and after the signal. That stability is what allows trust to turn into deeper connection. High-value women are especially sensitive here. They've learned to detect when men rush intimacy instead of honoring it. When you honor trust without words, you separate yourself immediately from men who only know how to push. If this reframes how you've been reading moments like these, lock it in now. Write this in the comments: I honor trust. Hold right there, folks. The next part explains where trust turns risky and why one specific zone changes everything when it appears. Number 6. The dangerous touch area. Folks, this is where everything becomes serious. Up to this point, touch has been about comfort, trust, and alignment. This area is different. It is dangerous not because it is sexual, but because it bypasses logic entirely. When this zone is involved, the nervous system reacts before the mind can catch up. Let's be direct, my friend. This area sits where visibility is reduced and vulnerability increases. She cannot easily see what is happening, and that alone changes the biological equation. When a woman allows touch here without tension, she is no longer just comfortable. She is trusting you with her safety on a primal level. Most men misunderstand this and think danger means excitement. It does not. Danger here means risk. Risk to her sense of control. Risk to her sense of safety. And that is why this zone is never neutral. It either deepens trust or destroys it instantly. Stoic philosophy helps keep this clear. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best way to live is to act with justice and restraint, regardless of opportunity. Opportunity does not justify action. Alignment does. When men confuse opportunity with permission, they break trust without realizing it. This area tests your self-command, not your confidence, not your boldness, your restraint. A man who can pause here, who can read the moment without rushing, communicates power without force. A man who acts from impulse communicates insecurity, even if his intent is good. Let's talk straight. When this zone is welcomed, it happens naturally. There is no flinch, no correction, no subtle withdrawal. Her body stays open, her breathing remains steady, her posture does not protect. That is the signal. Anything else is a no, even if words stay polite. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from mastery of self, not control of others. This is where that lesson matters most. You cannot talk your way through this zone. You cannot justify it. You either have alignment or you do not. Here is the trap many men fall into. They assume consistency elsewhere grants access here. It does not. This zone has its own rules. It requires cumulative trust and perfect timing. Skipping ahead collapses everything built so far. Another truth most men ignore is that this zone reveals intention instantly. There is no ambiguity. When a man touches here prematurely, his desire becomes louder than his awareness. Women feel that immediately, and the nervous system responds by closing. Stoicism reminds us that desire unchecked becomes a liability. Seneca warned that the man who cannot control himself is controlled by his impulses. This zone exposes that instantly. Men who lack restraint reveal themselves here faster than anywhere else. When handled correctly, this area deepens polarity and trust simultaneously. When mishandled, it triggers alarm. There is no middle ground. This is why grounded men do less, not more. They observe, they wait, they allow her body to lead before they ever consider action. That patience is not weakness, it is discipline. And discipline is what separates men who are remembered from men who are avoided. If this reframes how you think about timing and restraint, write this in the comments now. I choose restraint. Hold right there, folks. The next section explains where desire deepens naturally and why this stage changes how she experiences you entirely. Number 7. Where desire deepens. Folks, this is the stage where attraction stops hovering on the surface and starts moving inward. Desire deepens not because you do more, but because she feels more. Let's talk plainly, my friend. This is not about escalation, it's about resonance. When desire deepens, her body and emotions are aligned, and that alignment changes how she experiences your presence. Up to this point, trust has formed and boundaries have been respected. Now something subtler happens. She begins to lean in without thinking. Her attention lingers. Her reactions soften. She's no longer evaluating whether you're safe. She's experiencing how it feels to be close to you. That shift is quiet, but it's powerful. Here's a real example. Robert is 50, calm, self-possessed, and socially comfortable. He's spending time with Elaine, 46, thoughtful and emotionally aware. They're sitting side by side during a relaxed evening. Conversation slows. There's no rush to fill the space. Elaine stays close, not out of convenience, but out of comfort. When Robert speaks, she turns toward him fully. Her attention isn't split. That focus is desire deepening. Not because of words, but because of presence. Most men miss this moment because they try to turn it into something else. They label it, they push it forward, they ask questions that pull her out of the experience and back into analysis. Desire doesn't deepen through explanation. It deepens through shared stillness. Let's be real here. When desire deepens, her nervous system feels safe enough to slow down. Slowness is the tell. Rushed energy collapses this stage. Calm energy strengthens it. If you've ever felt a moment stretch naturally, you've felt this without knowing what it was. Another example. Brian is 47 and walking with Melissa, 43, after a long conversation. As they move, Melissa adjusts her pace to match his. She doesn't hurry. She doesn't create distance. When they stop, she stays close without needing a reason. Brian doesn't comment. He doesn't grab. He simply remains present. That restraint allows desire to deepen instead of breaking the spell. This is where masculine grounding matters most. Desire deepens when you're not trying to capture it, when you let it exist without turning it into proof. The men who succeed here are the men who don't need reassurance that it's happening. High-value women are especially sensitive to this stage. They've felt men rush it before. They know what it feels like when someone tries to cash in on a moment instead of honoring it. When you don't rush, you stand out immediately. Let's talk straight. Desire deepens when she feels chosen without pressure, when your attention is focused but not possessive, when your presence feels steady instead of hungry. That combination creates polarity without force. This is also where patience pays off. When you allow desire to deepen naturally, intimacy follows on its own timeline. You don't have to manufacture anything. You don't have to prove anything. You simply stay grounded and let alignment do the work. If you've ever felt this moment and wondered what it meant, lock this in now. Write this in the comments. I stay present. Keep watching, folks. The next section reveals what happens when desire crosses into sacred territory and why that line changes everything. Number 8. The sacred territory. Folks, this is the zone where attraction crosses into reverence, not excitement, not flirtation, reverence. This territory is sacred because it carries identity, vulnerability, and instinctive trust all at once. When a woman allows access here, it is never casual. It is a decision made by the nervous system, not the mouth. Let's be clear, my friend. Sacred does not mean mystical. It means biologically protected. The body guards what matters most. Areas tied to breath, identity, and sensory overload are defended automatically. When those defenses soften, something profound has already happened. Most men mistake confidence for entitlement at this stage. They assume progress elsewhere grants access here. It does not. This territory opens only when trust, timing, and restraint converge. Anything else is intrusion, and intrusion collapses everything built before it. Stoicism gives us a clean lens. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When your thoughts are patient, your presence is patient. When your thoughts are grasping, your presence becomes invasive. In sacred territory, intention is felt instantly. There is no hiding behind charm. This is why restraint matters more here than anywhere else. A man who can pause, who can feel the moment without acting, communicates power without pressure. A man who acts because he feels entitled communicates fear of losing the moment. Women feel that difference before you ever move. Let's talk straight. When sacred territory opens, there is a softening, not excitement, softness. Breath deepens, muscles release. The body stays present instead of preparing to pull away. These are not signals to take more. They are signals to remain steady. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from mastering desire, not feeding it. This is that lesson in real time. Desire unchecked pushes forward. Desire mastered holds space. Holding space is what allows the moment to deepen rather than fracture. Another truth men ignore is that sacred territory closes fast when pressure appears. Commentary, escalation, or performance snaps awareness back on. The nervous system returns to guard mode. What felt open seconds ago becomes unavailable. That shift is immediate and final. Stoic discipline protects you here. Seneca warned that he who is impatient invites chaos. Impatience in sacred territory reads as self-interest, not desire. Patience reads as safety. Safety allows surrender. Surrender is never forced. It is offered. This stage is not about touch. It is about presence. The man who understands this does not rush. He does not narrate. He does not test. He stays grounded and lets alignment speak. That composure is rare, and rarity creates value. Here's the paradox, folks. The men who want this moment the least are the men who experience it most. Because they are not trying to capture it, they are honoring it. And honor is what keeps sacred territory open. If you have ever felt a moment like this and didn't know why it mattered, lock this in now. Write this in the comments. I honor the moment. Hold steady right here. The next section reveals the unmistakable signs of surrender and why missing them is the final mistake most men make. Number 9. Signs of surrender. Folks, this is the moment most men misunderstand, rush, or completely miss. Surrender is not submission. It is not weakness. It is the body choosing to stop resisting. And when that happens, it is unmistakable if you know what to look for. Let's talk straight, my friend. Surrender does not look loud. It does not look dramatic. It looks quiet, soft, and unguarded. It shows up when effort disappears, when she stops managing herself around you, when control is no longer a priority. Here's a real example. Jonathan is 52, calm, emotionally steady. He's spending time with Claire, 47, confident and usually very self-directed. As they sit close, conversation fades. Claire tilts her head slightly toward Jonathan without thinking. Her shoulders drop. Her breathing slows. She doesn't fill the silence. She stays. That is surrender, not because Jonathan did something, but because Claire's nervous system chose to rest. Most men miss this because they expect surrender to look like enthusiasm. They look for words, compliments, or overt desire. But surrender is the absence of effort. It is when she no longer feels the need to maintain distance or awareness. Here's another situation. Daniel, 49, is walking with Melissa, 44, after a long evening. Melissa is usually animated and expressive, but in this moment she grows quieter. Her movements become slower. She stays close without checking where Daniel is. She trusts he's there. That trust is surrender. It's not sexual, it's neurological. Let's be real for a moment. Surrender only happens when safety, attraction, and restraint align. It cannot be forced. It cannot be negotiated. The moment you try to take advantage of it, it disappears. That's why grounded men experience it more often. They're not hunting for it. Another example. Chris is 55, confident, not reactive. He's sitting next to Laura, 48. Laura unconsciously closes her eyes for a moment while leaning slightly toward him. That brief release tells Chris everything. Her guard is down. Her system is calm. He doesn't comment. He doesn't move. He stays steady. That steadiness is why the moment continues instead of collapsing. Here's the key distinction, folks. Surrender is offered, not taken. It's an invitation to remain grounded, not a cue to escalate. Men who understand this deepen connection. Men who misunderstand it break trust instantly. High-value women are especially sensitive here. They know when a man is present versus when he's trying to capitalize. Presence feels safe. Capitalizing feels predatory. The difference is felt immediately. Let's talk consequences. When you honor surrender by staying calm, attraction deepens naturally. When you rush, the nervous system snaps back into defense. There are no second chances with this moment. This is why Stoic restraint matters. Control yourself, not the moment. When you can do that, surrender happens more often than you expect, because she feels free to let go without fear. If this clarifies moments you've experienced but never understood, lock it in now. Write this in the comments: I honor surrender. Keep watching, folks. The final part reveals the ultimate signal, the one that only appears when everything you've learned has been done right. Number 10. The ultimate signal. Folks, this is the signal men talk around but rarely understand. It isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, and it's not something you force or manufacture. The ultimate signal appears only when everything you've learned so far has been done right. It's not about taking, it's about being trusted with control. Let's talk straight, my friend. This signal shows up when a woman stops managing herself around you, not just emotionally but physically. It's when she allows you access to something deeply tied to identity, comfort, and vulnerability without hesitation and without tension. That doesn't happen because you're bold. It happens because you've been consistent, patient, and grounded. Here's a real-world picture. Stephen is 54, calm, observant, not trying to impress. He's spending time with Angela, 49, confident and self-possessed. Conversation fades naturally. At some point, Angela adjusts closer and allows Stephen to gently move something that's intimately hers without correcting him or stiffening. Her body doesn't react defensively. She exhales. That moment isn't sexual in itself. It's neurological. Her system has decided she doesn't need to guard. Most men misunderstand this moment because they're waiting for verbal permission or overt desire. But the ultimate signal isn't about desire first. It's about surrender of control. When a woman allows that, she's saying without words, I trust you not to misuse this. Another example. Michael, 51, is sitting with Denise, 46, after a long evening together. Denise usually maintains her space and composure. In this moment, she relaxes completely and allows Michael to engage in a small, intimate adjustment that most people are protective of. She doesn't watch him. She doesn't correct him. She simply stays present. That lack of supervision is the signal. Her guard is down. Let's be clear. This is not a green light to escalate. It's a test of character. The men who fail here act on impulse. The men who pass remain steady. They don't rush. They don't comment. They don't treat the moment like a prize to cash in. They treat it like trust to be honored. This is where Stoic self-command matters most. You don't react to opportunity. You respond to alignment. You understand that the moment continues only if you remain the same man who created it. When you change, when urgency appears, the signal disappears. Here's the deeper truth, folks. Women don't surrender to men who want control. They surrender to men who don't need it. When you're comfortable without taking more, she feels safe offering more. That's the paradox most men never grasp. This ultimate signal is rare because it requires discipline. You had to read comfort correctly. You had to respect permission. You had to move patiently through trust, danger, desire, and restraint. Miss one step, and this never appears. And when it does appear, the right response is calm presence. You don't turn it into a story. You don't prove anything. You let it exist. That's what makes you unforgettable. This isn't about tricks, folks. It's about becoming the kind of man a woman can relax around completely. When you reach that point, you don't wonder where you stand. You already know. Folks, today we broke down the silent signals most men never learn to read. From comfort and trust to restraint, surrender, and the ultimate signal, you now understand how attraction actually reveals itself before a single word is spoken. This isn't about forcing moments. It's about awareness, patience, and self-control rooted in Stoic discipline. If you want to go deeper and sharpen this kind of masculine awareness in real life, consider joining the private membership. That's where we work on presence, emotional mastery, and becoming the kind of man women naturally feel safe around. And if this video gave you clarity, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for spending this time with me, folks. I appreciate you, and I'll see you again tomorrow.